All right, so I connected this to the recording, so mind your words. Okay, but thank you everyone for coming. It's an honor and pleasure to have Professor Korpel and Anne. We are trying to help Adrian celebrate his 90th anniversary a few days late, but it's so nice that we could all gather together. The only person I will have to say missing is Ron. He did finally say that he couldn't come, but he will be on Zoom later on. Oh, and he will join. That'd be great. Yeah. Okay. Very nice. Thank you very much. So this has been, going on in the preparation for maybe a couple of months, and everyone very much collaborated and worked out. I'll give you some more details of what went on later on, but I'm happy to say that everyone's contributions are appreciated. Thank you very much for doing that. I did take the liberty to assemble some of these events together. I'll speak a few more words later on, but first, to start the whole event, Professor Korpel.
I have been talking with quite a few of you, and I came to the university, and you guys had just started there. Not all of you had just started there. It was kind of the beginning of first year, and I just started there too. I had 19 years behind me doing other things, but nevertheless, I started sort of at the same time. And that, I think, was very important because the difference in age between us was actually not very great. It was, I think, like 24 years. And that I came there. And so from the very beginning, I think we had great contact with trying to set up a lab. And I was just talking to Poon about some of the things that he and I did. And I won't reveal what went wrong. But we had a lot of fun in those days. So I want to thank you for coming to Tucson and to celebrate all this. Actually, more celebrating friendship, I think, than my birthday. Although it kind of surprises me when I look back that I have already spent 90 years on this wonderful planet. That's amazing. And so although the doctors say that maybe you won't make it to 100, they're always pessimistic. So I count on a couple of years more. All right, now I would like to give you a kind of a brief timeline covering the time before I met with all of you. That was, you were my first students at the University of Iowa. When I came to Iowa, it's hard to believe, I was about 45 then. And you, on the average, were about 20. You had just finished high school, came to the university. So there was only 25 years of actual difference at that time, and I thought that was marvelous. And the university also, the most of you that I would teach were in your 20s, 25 years younger than myself. And I think that makes a difference. If you are going to be taught by a guy who's 70 years older you're not likely to feel much sympathy for them. But we had a lot in common. We both started at ages that were not too far apart. So I wrote here, this 25-year difference turned out to be beneficial. I was not too old to understand your view of life, and you not too young to understand mine. So it came out this way. And in the beginning, there was this mutual understanding of our differences in age. And it kept on this understanding. And that was the reason we got along so well. And that we are still together as we're doing today. That's remarkable. And so years ago, we were each embarking on a new phase of our lives and figuring it out. It was new for you after being at the university, and it was new for me. Well, I was older. Now, all these years later, I am delighted to see this confirmed. We are still the same close friends that we were then. So let us celebrate our wonderful friendship, still alive and well after 45 years. I'd like to thank all of you for being here, with a special thanks to PASA and all of you for organizing this. And now let's start the festivities and the eating and the talking.
Anybody else? Let me see. I wrote something out.
Would you like to say some words now or later?
What do you think? What's a good plan? First, do the eating.
I think let's do the eating and then before the cake. Right.
And then I'll pick up from where you left off.
Okay.
All right, okay. So Monish is going to say a few words.
All right, I think I brought a little bit of writing with me, like I did for the 80th birthday as well. And as a preamble, let me mention that I wrote a small something last time at the 80th, and I wrote one for Dr. Korpel, and shortly after that for Dr. Longren as well, because Dr. Longren is following him like within a few years of each other. So I wrote one for both back then. And interestingly, the Optical Society has published both of those poems in their website. So if anybody wants to see them, they are there. So now for the 90th, I had to do something as well, which I kind of did in a bit of a hurry.
The only
But-
problem is there is no optical society. These guys have changed their name.
That's what I don't like that, this Optica these days, but that's a different matter altogether. Hello, Ron, I can see
Hey,
you.
Monish.
Hi,
Hey,
we're missing you, but it's good you're here.
I'm missing you being there.
I know. So in order to keep it relatively short, but at the same time, since I did say I will follow up what Dr. Korpel was saying, I will first say a few words from that perspective and then maybe read out from what I brought along. So as far as the perspective goes, for me, it is January of 1980. So now 42 plus years. It's impossible to even wrap our minds around that amount of time having gone by. But I must say that back then, and indeed I was just around 24, thereabouts, and coming in from India, then I knew that I was going to have this advisor who was 48 at that time. And this is the whole thing. Today, each of us, his former students, has long gone past the age 48, right? But back then, 48 looked like an old person, indeed. Even though Dr. Korpel was a real good sport when he said we were in your age bracket. But from my perspective, is a much older guy, okay? And then I remember when you reached age 50, you wrote something about it, that it looked like the big question that is, are we going down over hill and that kind of thing. And these days we are looking way back at age 50, actually, each of us. So it's amazing how much time indeed has gone by. And let me also add a little perspective in terms of how I got there in Iowa City. And that has a lot to do with Partha here. And the whole story being that Partha and I went to undergraduate school together, same department, same school, same set of teachers, all of that. We were lab partners for the longest time. But Partha preceded me in coming to the US by 1 semester. He got here in the fall of '79. And once he got here, there's a lot of stories to be told about that. He kept on sending me postcards. You have to apply. You have to apply. It just was relentless because I was already in the master's program back at the IIT, but he dropped me postcards like on a weekly basis. And back then, sending postcards every week was not an easy thing, by the way. I mean, because nothing was as fast as today, right? So he was very persistent. And then I heard kind of the story that Professor Korpel had a student who apparently wasn't doing very well, with the last name Berman, if I remember correctly. And something happened at some point. Dr. Korpel told him that he could no longer be in the program. So he literally like fired him. And once he did that, now this is to Partha's credit, he had kind of set such a great example as a grad student. And I'm not surprised at all because the first thing I heard about, which didn't surprise any of us also, was that he had just sent Dr. Korpel a handwritten piece of something he derived from India before he came here. And the handwriting alone impressed Professor Korpel. This is what I have heard, that anyone could write that beautifully just by plain hand. It was a piece of artwork, literally. And we had seen it for the longest time, so it was not news to us. But that's how he got here. I mean, Dr. Korpel saw that, and it's kind of like the Ramanujan Hardy story, I think, in some ways. So then he gets here, he impresses everybody from what I understand. And so then this other guy gets fired. So Dr. Korpel comes to Partha and says, can you recommend one of your friends to take his place, right? And so long story short, and because he had been sending me the postcards, so then that's how everything fell into place, right? And that's how I ended up here. So there's a lot more to be said regarding all those early times, and each of us has long anecdotes to remember. But it does look like just the other day that all this happened, and we all got together in so many ways, including Willie over here, of course. I mean, joining us from Belgium. We have storehouses of stories with Willie, which I will refrain from getting into right now. Okay, so maybe one of these, if we gather for Willie, whenever that big milestone happens, we'll pick up on that theme at that time. Okay, so with that, let me actually read this little piece I jotted together. This was literally the night before I started for this trip. So I had some thoughts in my mind regarding 90, of course. So the title of this piece is The Hierarchy of 9, Celebrating AK's Ascension Towards the Centennial. And we are definitely all looking forward to that, regardless of what your doctor tells you. We have to be here for the centennial as well. So here are the things to say. A major milestone, no doubt, trekking across science, consciousness, and the interplays of creation for 9 decades, anchored in 3 continents. I wrote 3 continents because I know you spent time in Australia as well. Exploring the frontiers of light and sound, ultrasonics, imaging, holography, and nonlinear phenomena, even while observing the absurdities inherent in the living experience with temperance and goodwill. The number 9, here amplified tenfold, through history has occupied a place of significance, perhaps more so in the Indian context. So here I throw in a little bit of the Indian context with the number 9. In the royal courts, from Chandragupta the Vikramaditya to Akbar the great Mughal, high honor was bestowed upon the Navaratna, the 9 jewels, bedazzling the court with achievements in astronomy, the sciences, economics, arts, and literature. In those early times, preceding the age of the quantum, space-time, and strings by centuries, when astronomy was often conflated with astrology and alchemy, not even sparing Sir Isaac. Human destinies were tied to the Navagraha, the 9 planets, Pluto's recent demoted status notwithstanding. Senses, there were 6. Avatars, there were 10. Vedas, there were 4. And the bard himself declared the 7 ages of man, visualizing presciently the grand theater that was this human life. And so forth with numbers of significance, from Avogadro to Planck, from Bernoulli to Boltzmann, then migrating to the number wizards, Ramanujan and Hardy, I just spoke about them, Gauss, Fermat, and Euler. In the decimal system, however, in its land of origin, 9 has held sway and thereby percolated to life. The deities, this I think those who are not familiar with Hinduism won't immediately grasp. The deities have been virtually defined by 9 in their myriad aspects. From the elemental 9, cycled through 12 solar months, arose 108 names or manifestations of each divine entity. And so parenthetically or sideways, I might say that many of the gods and goddesses that are common to Hindus, they are all described as having 108 names. And so there's a numerics behind that, which, as I point out here, is 9 times 12, and it goes from there. From thence arose the number 864 crores. A crore, by the way, is 10 million. So 864 crores signifying a Brahmic day, which almost adds up to the age of the universe, if I might say so. Yet in this moment of celebrating 9 times 10, the limit need hardly be set by mythology. One may perhaps consider quantum folklore. One enters here the realm of Schrodinger's cat. I've abbreviated SC, usually anointed a paradox. Now, by folklore, a cat, it is said, has 9, mark it, 9 lives. An appropriate question might well be, does the paradoxical Schrodinger cat have 9 lives as well? Or are there all these nested speculations in vogue? Does SC have 9 full lives with 0 non-living intervals? Or 9 half-lives in the box and another 9 half-lives outside? Or the unresolved probabilistic existential issues of whether any of those lives is actually lived within or without. Perhaps only our nonagerian sage might provide the answers. So we are all looking at Dr. Korpel at this point for the maybe answers to those riddles, or perhaps not. And so today, counting our good fortune of having shared these years as fellow travelers with you, our activities having taken us near and far, our together years progressively receding to the farthest reaches of the memory hole, we are gathered with gratefulness for the training received by your hands in scientific rationalism. Remembering vital younger years, gathering around serialized presentations of the Far Pavilions and the Day After. These were two TV shows that were hugely dramatized in those mid-1980s, and Professor and Mrs. Korpel from back then, they came over to our apartment to watch it with us, these serials that were produced by ABC. So one was based on an Indian story, which is the Far Pavilions. Professor Korpel might remember some of that. And then there was the Day After, which was about the likelihood of a nuclear holocaust and a nuclear winter that follows that. So we had these incredible gatherings during that time, watching all that. Long before the age of the internet and communications tools in every hand, which is so common today, products of the very quests and searches you had pursued and made us fellow participants in. So all these tools and gadgets, we actually saw the beginnings of those through these very researches that many of us have been engaged in. The many Q&As from the Socratic meetings. Here was another thing very unique to Dr. Korpel. He would gather the grad students around at least once a week, and we'd exchange our work and ideas and all that. And they were labeled Socratic meetings. And I greatly appreciated that from them. On behalf of all of our very special league of knowledge seekers, we offer the most heartfelt compliments with the fervent hope, may your journey to 100 be a blissful ride on cloud 9. Thank you.
Very much. Maybe I should request someone else. Willie, would you like to come to the podium? And after Willie, how about Ron? Let's do that, and let's try to do it within like 3 to 5 minutes. Actually.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
So after Willie, maybe Ron.
Hey, Willie.
Good to see you, Ron.
Good to see you.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you.
I still drink a glass of Lambrusco every night.
Yeah. Oh, that's
You
good.
remember? You recommended that for me years ago.
Did I?
You did. I can blame you for that.
So, Ron, I'm going to be the close-up to you here. I'll be a bit further away for the rest. If I'm shouting too loud, let me know.
Okay.
So, Renilde and I are so happy to be here today on this special occasion, this joyous occasion, in the company of you, Adrian, and Anne, and all the good friends from so many years, the former students and their spouses. I met Adrian and Loni in 1982 at a Soliton conference in Edinburgh in Scotland. And a few months prior to that, I had defended my PhD in the field of acousto-optics at the University of Ghent in Belgium, and I was looking actually for a postdoc advisor. So although I knew Korpel from his work, of course, in acousto-optics, all his book and his seminal work, it was absolutely serendipity that brought us together unexpectedly at this nonlinear waves conference. So we hit it off, and Adrian accepted to be my postdoctoral advisor for what would become not only 1, but 2 years of postdoc in Iowa City. Academic years 1983 and 84, and 85 and 86 were exciting, rewarding, and very fun years. A perfect start actually to my career in the US. When I arrived there, Poon had just graduated and had already left, but Partha was still there, Monish was there, Ron was there, and I think Dave started when I came the second year. And so they were all in Adrian's research group. When I came there, I stayed with Loni and Adrian for 2 weeks before they helped me settle into my apartment in Coralville. Loni gave me cooking advice, especially when something had gone wrong in my kitchen, which was quite frequent those days. And Loni also told me how to survive the bitter cold Iowa winters without a car. I vividly remember that I got frostbitten waiting for the bus that didn't come. And Loni showed me how to slowly thaw my nose, you know. So she helped me. So I still have my nose, thanks to her. Partha and Monish helped me with my English. And in return, I showed them how to solve Rubik's Cube. I quickly learned, particularly from Monish, the difference between virgin and Virgo, the difference between nails and gloves, the difference between hand shoes, which I had made up, and gloves. And Monish has a much longer list of these hoops. So we also had great scientific collaboration, of course, with Adrian, which led to 3 publications, well-cited publications, with Adrian and his group. And that included Partha and Monish, also Ron, we have a joint paper. And then later I had some more papers actually with Partha and Monish and their students. But most importantly, the 2 years in Iowa led to lifelong friendships. Those I value the most. Adrian, I believe I speak for all of us. Your scientific advice was very much appreciated. We learned so much from you. But more than that, we value the mentorship we received from you. You showed us how to inspire students to do research and guide them to the finish line. You supported our unfolding careers with numerous letters of recommendation, with phone calls and advice all the way. You set a great example for us how to care for students and treat them with respect and with kindness. So, Adrian, we are forever grateful for all you have done for us all of those years. Congratulations to your 90th birthday, Adrian. We wish you and Anne many, many more happy years in good health. And we will be here for your 100th. It's promised. Thank you.
Thank you very much, William. Excellent. Ron, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, I can do that. I'll keep it brief. Okay.
I don't know how to set this properly because
Okay.
you are there, but I'll be happy to hold this for you while others are listening. No,
Okay.
go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, I'll get started. I'll mention that I came to University of Iowa in what's called the math, basically math, physics, engineering program, and I was in that program for 1 year. I had taken I had audited a course back at Wisconsin by a guy named Saleh, who was teaching Fourier optics, and I just knew enough that I wanted to know more. And I think ultimately what happened was I had the opportunity to take class with Professor Korpel, and it really excited me, and ultimately talked to him about doing some work with him. So I think that kind of summarizes how I got started. Let me say a few words, I guess, that I also put together. I might mention that we had great insight. We obtained great insight in the areas of optical engineering, and I think Monish mentioned these: acousto-optics, lasers, nonlinear waves, etc. I also might mention that there's a very long list of the technological impacts of the work that was collaboratively done and done by Professor Korpel that I noticed had been done there. And one work in particular that keeps coming up turned out to be a landmark work, is his work on that I keep seeing, at least, is his work on the extended digital image processing for extended depth of field. That seems to be a work that still resonates in the digital imaging community. Also, let's see, I might mention that kind of echo the sentiment of Monish, is I found that as a students, Professor K often used the Socratic method in terms of livening up the class. And I found that it was helpful to me as an instructor. I know I enjoyed it, using it. I can't say that much for the students, but I know I enjoyed it. Let me just, all right. I know we all feel very fortunate to be able to have been at the University of Iowa, to have had opportunity to take classes and do research work under him. The range and depth of interesting topics, which were already mentioned, created such opportunities, and it turned out to be the best experience a graduate student could hope for. I think I'll summarize by just saying, to paraphrase Dickens, it was the best of times to be a graduate student. Best wishes, Professor Korpel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Very much. Thanks. And I guess Ron pretty much followed on the shoes of Professor Poon. So I would invite Ting Chung to say a few words. How's that?
Okay, Ron, you see me okay?
I can.
Okay. Well, first of all here, since still here, my talk is going to be about 2 hours, okay? Yeah. Well, actually, that was a stunt. Remember, Professor Korpel, you want to stunt your student in the first day of class. You want me to ask to generate a transparency fill up all the equations in there. The whole transparency will fill up all the equations. The first thing you want to tell the student, this is a slide that I'm going to show you, and then you remember that one? Yeah, you asked me to write a slide of fill up all the equations, and then you show to the class the first day, the first lecture. This is the equation I'm going to show you. That's what you told me. Yeah, you really remember that? But anyway, so yeah, I think we sent it. I think we also sent it to OSA, that slide. But I don't know where the slide. But anyway, congratulations on your 90th birthday, and I was very proud that I was your very first student from the University of Iowa. Yeah, and you have taught me a lot. And then I started thinking about, well, what was the thing that you taught me the most? And then I say, well, it must be experimental skills, you know. Back then, when I finished my physics degree, and then I came over to the electrical engineering, right? I don't know much about electrical engineering. I know physics, some. And then I started reading something that, people, electrical engineering said, okay, I read some articles that, in the power outlet here is probably have about 15 amps, and I said, in my lab there, in our lab there, we have a multimeter. And then, okay, it's a 15 amps, right? I get the multimeter, I turn it to the, the current meter that measure current, and I stick it to that. And then it's short, right? It's a short. And then the multimeter, the probe is actually melted. And then you came in, and then after that you came in, and they said, no, you want to measure voltage, you should turn it to the voltage things there. And then he said, you can try to measure the voltage there. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. Then you did it. And then you put it, voltmeter there, and then it still spark. And I was scared. Well, the reason is that I think the first time I used the voltmeter, I think it burned, I think damaged the meter. And then so therefore the voltmeter would not work. I think this is how it came about. But anyway, so from that here, I learned a great deal of experimental skills from you. Since then, I remember that we measured optical probing of surface acoustic waves. We've done some work on that. And then with Ron and also with Partha, we was set up the acoustic optic of FM modulator,
That's
FM
correct.
modulator. It was
Correct.
quite a lot of fun. And then I remember when you first came to the department, you want to build your lab, right? And then we hunt over the department for all the old equipments and all the surplus equipments. Because back then, I guess you don't have much things going on there, so that you have to get a lot of equipments from the department there. That skill that actually I learned also that when I first went to Virginia Tech, actually the first thing I do here, because I want to build up my lab, I move over the department, salvage all the old equipments, and I put into my lab and I start using those equipments there. So yeah, and yeah, I learned a lot of great deal of things about experimental skills. That was a lot of fun there. Thank you. I think that's about it. I think that's what I have in mind there. Yeah, and first also, yeah, I would like to thank Parker for organizing this meeting, and that he ironed out a lot of some of the more details for us, so that we don't have to worry about things. We basically just come over. Thank you, Parker, also. Thank you.
Well, I prepared absolutely nothing, so I'm this is all off the cuff. But we were asked to talk about how we, I guess, how Professor Korpel and I met each other. And I did my undergraduate electrical engineering study at University of Iowa. And if I remember correctly, I think the first course that I took from you might have been communication theory. I just really liked his teaching style, and he is very thought-provoking. It just really made you think, and his very fascinating way of talking. Just kind of like put you in really got your mind working and thinking like that. And later, I think it was a senior project, we all had an opportunity to pick a project of our own and work on it. I think it was a semester-long project, and I teamed up with well, I should go back a little bit. I also took a course in Fourier optics as an undergraduate from Professor Korpel, and that's what really fascinated me. And that whole field really fascinated me. And a classmate of mine, his name was Clay Harmon, he was also in that course. And we elected to get together for our senior project, and we chose to build a computerized pipe organ of all things. So it's kind of a weird thing. So turns out my grandfather, he tuned, repaired, and installed pipe organs and fixed panels and stuff for a living. And he happened to have an old pipe organ up in his attic that had in his house years ago, and he had took it out and stored it up in the attic. Well, he was kind enough to give me a set of pipes from that organ. So we took the pipes, and starting with the pipes, we had to build what's called the pipe chest, and a bunch of solenoids, and a blower, and a pressure regulator mechanism, and all that stuff, and then a keyboard. So my dad had a Thomas organ keyboard that had two manuals, one here and one here, but neither were long enough. So we took one of the manuals and we literally cut off the lowest key with a hacksaw and butted them together. And so anyway, that was our semester project. And then we were also supposed to computerize it. So what we did is I had an old Radio Shack computer, and we had it all dreamed up, how exactly had this circuit all figured out and everything, how we're going to wire it. We started to wire it up, point-to-point soldering connections, and we had to do this for 49 different notes. Well, as I recall, we got one octave done, and we had this huge rat nest of wires, just wires going everywhere. We didn't know anything about how to make printed circuit boards and stuff like that. So we just stopped there, and I think we had it computerized to work with one octave of notes, but all the other notes worked manually. And so we gave a demo out in the parking lot of the electrical engineering building one day, and I guess Professor Korpel told me today that that's the reason that he offered to take me on as a graduate student. So, but after that, I worked for IBM for a year and a half to save up money to go back to school. And then I ended up coming back and then started working on my master's and later my PhD under Professor Korpel. It was nice enough to give me a research assistantship. And that pretty much tied me all the way through, except I also worked on the side because I had to have beer money too, but anyway, then later on, I worked, I was a assistant professor and then later associate professor at Texas Tech University in Lubbock. And we were there for 10 years and my wife said she didn't like Lubbock, and then the place she was working for, Texas Instruments, closed down their plant there and offered her another job if she relocated to the Dallas area. So I ended up resigning my job and going to Dallas, and I worked there for Texas Instruments for a while in the area of optics. Then later, a place that got bought out by Austria Microsystems, and I worked there until I retired. But I think during my career, which is, I think one of the biggest, most valuable things I learned was also in the area of experimental methods, just the ability to draw upon anything from image processing, knowledge of computers, programming, and bring that together with lasers. And I learned a lot about RF and stuff like that. All these things, we're just able to collect. And I also learned how to do things very frugally. So you can work with how can you do something from nothing? And that took me a long ways. And I think that's true of a lot of us here, that we just learned how to make things, get to the end, make something work no matter what it took. And even if we didn't have a lot of resources. But anyway, I'll end it with that. And I'll just say that I wish Professor Korpel and Ann many, many more. And hopefully maybe we'll be here again in 10 years.
Very much.
First of all, happy birthday, 90th birthday, Professor Korpel. We are very delighted to celebrate your birthday with Anne and all special of your former student. I was thinking about the memory of 30 years ago. You and Ronnie and Dr. Poon and Partha, we were invited to go to the conference in Leningrad, Russia. And I was very lucky one to be joined with Partha. And it was a white night in that Leningrad, and it's a beautiful scenery, as well as a historic monument at the river of Neva River. And some of the special memory is I clearly remember Professor Korpel, Partha, and Dr. Poon was asked by Russian folks to sing about the American folk song, and three of you are the naturalized citizen and managed to very well to sing American folk song. I forgot what was the name of the song, but it was very, funny for me. And other thing which I remember is we stay in the hotel Leningrad, very nice hotel, and each floor has a tea lady. Young tea lady always serve the tea with boiled egg, with a big samovar, it's big Russian thick pot. And Professor the Korpel became a good friend of her, and she was very nice to us, all of us, and we enjoyed the tea with them. And one of the other thing I remember is the river cruise on the Neighbor River, and we drank vodka till we drank, all of us drank at on the cruise ship. It was beautiful memory. May you have many more enjoyable days and years, good health, and loving company. Thank you so much for your commitment, for your teaching, and the innovation of excellence. And furthermore, thank you for your care and love of all of us, including us who accompany with your followers. And happy birthday again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Well, I will, as they say, I'll clear up the tape. But thank you once again. Thank you once again for such a wonderful company, such wonderful memories. And I just wanted to, again, thank everyone for staying healthy and coming, doing all their tests and getting negative results on the tests. Yes, negative results are good. That's what Professor Korpel has always told us. Negative results are good. But I wanted to, on the basis of, talking about exams, say that when I first came to this country and I took his Fourier optics class and then followed with a quantum electronics class, I was kind of scared simply because I did know that he was a tough grader, of course. And secondly, all other professors typically in those days posted the grades on the doors along with the last 4 of your socials, which are not allowed anymore. And people typically would write the A's on the left side, then the B's and the C's. But Professor Korpel had a different approach. He drew the number line, and the highest grade, of course, the A's would be on the right. So I would always kind of go at an angle, try to look what is on the left, and I didn't find my 4 socials. So I would be very scared till I figured out that he was doing it much more mathematically. So thank you once again for instilling the fear in everyone. But it was amazing. But I have to also say at the same time, the second course, quantum electronics, was on a cold Iowa winter morning at 7:30. And I had set the alarm, it did not ring. And Professor Korpel called me at home at 7:15, and I ran to the exam hall. So thank you, Professor Korpel, for waking me up. And it was really very nice of an advisor to do that. And I, as I said, was my second semester there. So speaking of how I got to know Professor Korpel, as Monish knows, certainly, all started when one of our professors at IIT, and his name is Professor N.B. Chakraborty, who just recently passed, but at the age of 97, he was very active. I personally have met him. He always would ask his students to report on hot topics. And so one day, confronted with this assignment of giving a seminar on hot topics, I went to the library and I pulled out a book. And that time, this book was Applied Solid-State Science, in which Professor Korpel had a chapter on acousto-optics. And I called my friend Anjan Ghosh, who also you know, who became later a faculty at Iowa, to together work on a seminar. Now, those days, unlike in Iowa, where you had the Xerox lady, we didn't have anyone. So I actually copied the whole chapter, all your 69 pages by hand in a notebook. And then we made the notes. So that was my first exposure to acousto-optics. Later on that year, one of my wingmates, and his name was Surya Prasad, he was in naval architecture. He brought up a book on University of Iowa, and he was applying to the Hydraulics Institute that was headed by a professor called V.C. Patel. And in that book, I found your name. And I tried to put 2 and 2 together because originally I had seen you at Zenith, but then I figured out you had moved to University of Iowa. And as Monish had said, those days I wrote you a letter on an aerogram, and I was very surprised to get a reply from you pretty much around the Ides of March, where you promised me an assistantship. And I was very surprised simply because I had not even formally applied and I had an assistantship in hand. Much later on, I visited the ECE office and I saw that letter in my folder, and Karma actually showed it to me. So thank you once again very much. And it was indeed because of your inspiration, I did call upon Monish to as well apply, and you so graciously also accepted him under your wings. I also wanted to mention that I wanted to work on acousto-optics, but when I joined your group, you already had someone, namely Ting Chung, working on the area. And so you recommended me to work on acoustic waves. So initially I was a little bit taken aback, but I decided to work in this area, and it was one of the best, I would say, decisions of my career. It taught me really how to adapt, taught me acoustics, which I picked up, also led me to nonlinear optics, because that was linked to nonlinear acoustics, and we published quite a few papers together. So that was indeed a very good learning experience. I wanted to also mention that you and Loni were family to all your students, certainly including me. Noriko, as she said, was introduced to you at St. Petersburg. And as she said, you would go and tip the young lady there to get a little extra flavor in your tea and our teas. I also remember with great grief when Noriko and I visited Iowa to spend some time after Loni's loss, and it was equally a very good pleasure to visit Iowa City with my parents when you and Anne got married. So it has been a great pleasure also having you visit Huntsville, Binghamton, and Syracuse. It was certainly also a great pleasure to visit you here in Tucson when I would come over a couple of times for the OSA meeting, once with Monish and other times when I came on work with University of Arizona. In short, it has been a wonderful journey with a wonderful advisor, with wonderful Indonesian Dutch treats. I particularly put in the word Indonesian before the Dutch treats. And those were free to us. You have led us, everyone, to our success. We wish you and Anne many, many more years of a healthy and conjugal life. Happy birthday, Adrian, and we look forward to seeing you certainly in 10 years, if not earlier. Thanks once again. So I think right now what we'll do, now we have a cake. So let us work on the cake and also open the champagne bottle or bottles. Okay, I wanted to say a few words about this cake.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I thought that I don't like that not really good for the airways. So
Another thing. And I can open up the other. Okay, how about the picture? All right. This one was fine. Yeah, that's fine. So it's a really part as well. Anyway. Okay, you open the
Yes.
No, no.